even been driven around in a giant red bus for the last month with the words, "We send the EU £350 million a week" written on the side. But that number has been thoroughly debunked. It's actually about £190 million a week when you consider a rebate the UK receives and other money that the EU sends back. On top of which, if Britain does leave the EU, it may have to spend close to that amount just to access the common market. So what the bus should really say is, we actually send the EU £190 million a week, which as a proportion of our GDP makes sound fiscal sense. In fact, considering the benefits we reap in return, we're running out of bus. OK, bye-bye.
Despite what is believed by much of the masses on both sides of the pond, Brexit is not the name of the new morning biscuit designed to relieve the effects of gaseous foods or beverages with a high level of fructose. Nor is it a new comic book superhero rumored to have the power of waving a magic hand drill and able to, in one instant, repair decades of horrendous dental care in the United Kingdom. Brexit is financial speak for British exit, referring to the possibility that in just 3 days, Britain will withdraw from the European Union and throw not just the European continent into chaos, but that it will naturally spread to the rest of that continent, this one, America, Asia, South America, the known planets in the solar system, and perhaps ripple deep into the Kree Empire. Okay, maybe South America is a bit of a stretch. But be prepared to weigh in as we go forward on this and much more on all the topics today. We have not only Brexit to discuss, but what else is happening here, the economy, a presidential candidate involved. We're going to get it all in here before we go ahead and get out of here. So stay on the line right now. Get involved. 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629. Begin there with the Chief Executive Officer from Lear Capital. Lear Capital is one of the leading and more respected gold companies in America, and our guest is consistently sought after for his commentary on global markets and the economy. Welcome Scott Carter to the Hard Line. Scott, thanks for joining us. My pleasure. Let's get right to it here because I have in front of me reams of paper that will tell me that Brexit is good for Europe and good for Britain, and reams of paper saying Brexit is bad for Europe and bad for the United Kingdom here. Put it in perspective, will you please?
Well, absolutely. Clearly, any sort of change sends the markets into turmoil. So whether you're on one side or the other, you know that change has a huge impact. And I think in the economic markets, if Britain were to leave, I think it would be a serious financial impact and change, and not only in the European Union, but also for investors worldwide. The matter is that Britain's strong. They're a big chunk of the union. They're probably paying a lot of the bills like Germany and France and Italy. The last thing that the other 20-some countries want to see is a major player like Britain leave the EU.
Let's get us down to America here, because not just Brexit and what's happening with this entire issue here, but we've had a tremendous amount of ripple effects on the global markets here in the last couple of weeks. The terrorist attacks in America come right to mind immediately. What happened in Orlando? How, in your opinion, are the global markets reacting to the turmoil, both in Europe with Brexit and here in America? Just what's happening here on our shores.
Well, I think you're seeing the market impact considerably what's happening, because if Brexit were to leave, or England were to leave, you would have a serious impact, not only in what's happening in the world, but also what's happening right there in the EU. And let's face it, the European Union is not just economic, but it's an open border syndrome. So when you think about the United States and you see the immigration and potential, individuals that aren't supportive of the United States way of life, it causes the average bear out there to pause. And I would imagine that's what's going on in Great Britain, too. With open borders and you see potential hostile people coming into your country and there's really no border to check them, then you would cause a kind of a scary situation for voters. So I think that there are some very real issues in Britain and in Europe that we don't face here in the United States, purely because you have many, many countries with open borders. Now, economically, the turmoil is significant because the whole world economy is tied together. So if Britain were to say that the Europe is no longer good for me, how long would it be before France says the same thing, Italy, Sweden, and all these other countries? And once that happens and the EU starts to unravel, then you've got a black swan event economically that would impact investors right here in the United States and our own economy.
1-877-NEWSMAX. If you'd like to join us, we'll get to your phone calls before we get out of here at the top of the hour. What about foreign and domestic travelers? I mean, will what happened in Orlando really have any effect? Because we've seen this before, New York, other places around the country. It seems to bounce back after a short time. But will this have a further lasting effect? Scott, did we lose you?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, okay. That was my question to you here. When it comes down to foreign and domestic travelers, do you think what happened in Orlando will have any great impact here in the United States, or will it simply just go back to normal after a while?
Well, we have a great tendency to forget what happens after 2 or 3 days, especially what's going on in the news. So there will be a hyper situation and concern about travel when it not only comes to the United States, but really as Americans travel in Europe. But I think overall, you're going to see that changes, and people they tend to forget, and they'll figure that the government has got it under control and that we live in a safe environment, and that piece will go back to normal. What won't go back to normal, though, is what's happening economically. And you touched on it earlier at the start of the show, which is you've got money, hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars moving to and from countries. Great Britain has not been the beneficiary of that. The United States hasn't been the beneficiary of that. When that takes full fold, then you're going to see an impact in the United States economically as well. Our economy is not strong. We do not need an extraordinary event that could dip us over into a recession, which I think we're right on the precipice right now.
I got about a minute left here. What do you think about when it comes down to the consumer, the people out here? Everybody's watching what's happening around the world. They're watching Brexit. They're watching what's happening in America right now. Where do you think people should put their money right now?
Well, I'm in the hard asset business, the safe haven environment. So I always think diversification is important. The fact is that many people are 100% in stocks, or maybe they've got some cash and the rest in stocks. I think that's a very risky venture right now because the stock market is at an all-time high around the world, and I feel that investors are really exposed at the moment. So when you have these concerns economically worldwide, when you have unbelievable debt around the world, then you should take notice as an investor and diversify. So I strongly recommend that individuals have a portion of their money into hard assets. That could be real estate, it could be precious metals, which is my business, but take account of the risk exposures that are out there and make the proper adjustments in your own portfolio.
I want to remind everybody a promotional note to our viewers. Scott and the team at Lear Capital constantly tracking the gold market and the global economy. Newsmax encourages you to view their information at the website learcapital.com to read more about how you can protect your wealth. Scott Carter, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's go ahead and get to your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-NEWSMAX. We got a couple of minutes here. Let's close things out on a Monday. Jeff is in Key Largo, Florida, talking about Britain leaving. Well, wait a minute. Britain leave the European Union? My God, Jeff, radical thought of you. Why?
Ed, come on. That's going to save Britain. The euro is a mistake. Every country in Europe should be responsible. They have their own GNP. Every country has something to offer the world.
But what about the fact that what about the fact that the European Union allows more work, more opportunity for people to cross borders? That's what the people say why Britain should stay in the European Union, because it's better for the overall economy, and Britain still uses the pound.
Yeah, well, it's going to bring them down. It's going to bring them down. They have to realize it's going to bring them down. And let me just tell you this: George Soros wants a new world order, and Donald Trump doesn't want to do that. He wants to keep the United States of America.
Keep the United States and keep Britain. There you go. Jeff, thanks a lot for your call. We do appreciate it. I got 30 seconds left. Darlene in Gold Hill, Oregon, who believes that Trump is bad for the party. Tell us why, Darlene. You get your shot.
Well, first of all, I would like to point out that we keep saying how much of the vote that Donald Trump received, which was about, I think it's somewhere between 16 and 18 million. There's 350 million people living in this country, and if only half of them vote, he's only received 10% of the vote. We don't need to elect a person for president who every time he opens his mouth, at least once every time he does a speech, he comes off half-cocked and then he turns around and has to step back from what he says. And that's a real problem for a president of the United States.
And it is what quite frankly, we're out of time. But Darlene, you're espousing what a lot of people feel on one side. But then again, you still have people who believe that he got the votes, he deserves to be the nominee, and he deserves to go up against Hillary Clinton because people do not want her in office. That is the end result. We'll do this all again tomorrow. Rock on, true believers. Thanks for joining us. See you back here tomorrow. Don't forget, good night and good luck.